This is part 8 of the VQ Hellcat build series. This is the final assembly. We'll have the installation of the elevator and rudder servos, cowling, mounting the wing, balancing the plane. As the instructions show, it has a connector as the wire or the push rod coming from the servo arm. And since this has two elevator push rods, it'll have this connector here. I'm not a real big fan of this, but this will have to do. The rod coming from the servo will go into the center hole, then the push rods for the elevators on the outside holes and tighten in with set screws. Same for the rudder. It will be vertically mounted. Center hole for the push rod connector, and then for the outer two holes for the rudder and steering push rods. Servos will go in place such as this. I'm thinking the receiver will go in this area here. This seems to be the best area looking at it, or maybe even up here, but pretty sure it will be down here. I've already glued the push rod guides in place. I will have to trim these back to about this area. The push rods are way long. You can see it's almost pretty much the length of the aircraft. We'll mount these on the control horns. I'll trim them back first, probably back in this area here, and then put them in the tubes, mount them, and then trim as needed to reach the connector for the servo push rods. I will put clamps on these to hold the elevators level. So I'll proceed by trimming push rod guides and installing the servos. I've trimmed back or cut the push rod guides. Elevator servo closest to me, rudder over the far side. Have these in place. I will drill holes to mount the servos with, didn't come with screws or anything. I have servo mounting screws that I will use for this. So I will drill the holes, get the drill bit centered in the hole as much as I can. Yeah, I might have to get my Dremel out to do this side. Yeah, maybe not. I like to put a little dab of CA in the hole. So I'll do that and get this screwed in, and I'll do the same process for the rudder servo. I have the servos mounted for the elevator and rudder. If I was using a glow engine, the throttle servo would be mounted here. Next step will be the push rods. As I mentioned before, these are way long. I will have to cut these down to get them up close enough to work with while they're attached to the control horns. I have both push rods for the elevators cut and in place. I have a clamp with popsicle sticks keeping the elevator level on this side for now. Just wanted to get an idea of how this is going to look. As mentioned before, the center rod from the servo arm will go in the center hole, and then the two outside holes will be for the push rods of the elevators. Same thing on this side for the rudder. Same setup. I'll take this off. I'm going to have to trim the rod for the from the servo arm back a little bit. I'll do that now. Put the set screws in. It does have screws for both sides of these, but obviously I can't get to it from the other side. Before I go on and connect this up, I do have the other side with the clamp and popsicle sticks on it to keep that side straight. I will be putting field tubing over the clevis. I have the system powered up. I want to check the direction of the servo. So that is up. So that would be pulling, which would cause it to go down. So I need to reverse. Which I already have it on. Do the reverse. So now it's going to push it up. Actually, this is up. And it will push the elevator up and pull it down. So I think we're good with that. Now I've already cut the servo arm lead. I have to take the servo arm off, put that on, then slide it on, then tighten everything down. I have everything tightened down on the connector. I did put the field tubing around both clevises, and let's try the direction. Up. Nice and smooth. I think we're good. Next will be the rudder. I have the same thing like I did for the elevator. I have the popsicle sticks and clamp to keep the rudder straight. I will connect the push rod, slide it in, and then we'll trim as I did for the elevator push rods. I have the push rod in. I'm going to trim it back about the same length as the tail wheel, and then the push rod on the servo arm, I'll probably cut it about the same distance, the same length as the elevator. I have the push rod from the servo arm trimmed down. I might trim it a little bit more, but as I was putting this together, these aren't tightened yet. I'm thinking it might be easier if I mount the receiver in this area before I tighten this down. So I think I'll take this apart, mount the receiver. I'm probably going to have to put some servo leads extensions on it, mark them for each of the channels. I'm thinking maybe I could put part of the receiver underneath this cross member here and have the leads come up from this side. But I'll mess with it and see what I come up with. Then once I get the receiver in, I'll put this back together and tighten the connections down here. Alright, after looking at it, since the antennas are coming out of the back of the receiver, I think I will put the receiver in like this so the antennas are straight back, put them through these holes in the cross members. Antennas will be in the back of this area through this frame, and then the leads will be coming out the front. I need to keep in mind when I have the leads on the wing, I'm going to have to replace these with something shorter, I think. I don't want to have so much wire crammed when I put the wing on in this area where it interferes or is touching the servos as they operate. So once the wing is on, I may see if I can have to maybe somehow push the servo leads back in this area, barring no interference with the battery that will be in this area, but from underneath. Originally I was thinking about having the receiver in here like this, and then have the antennas go either direction, which may not be a bad idea. I ended up removing the elevator connection. I have a piece of foam that I cut to fit nice and snug in this bottom area. I will cut out a notch for the receiver to help hold the receiver in place. It'll be a snug fit in the foam, but I will have maybe a piece of Velcro go across the top of it. Connect here and then down on the wood here. I have the foam cut out for the receiver. The leads will come out this side, and we'll have the antennas, one going forward and one going to the back. I may put some push rod tubing like this down on the side, glue those in to put the antennas in. But I will have the battery lead come down to the front. Still not sure where we're going to mount the guts for the motor. Either on servos, like I said, one on either side, rudder and elevator. Won't need extensions on. Retracts, no throttle since this is electric. Don't need to hook up a throttle. Connect these leads and we'll mark them. It looks like that will be enough clearance for the rudder and steering. And I think I will put a piece of Velcro around or over the top and connect to the wood on either side. I have the receiver mounted. Instead of using Velcro, I used zip ties. I created labels for each of the servo extensions. I have some still to put on the wing servo extensions, but I think this will work. Now I'll put the elevator back in place and set the rudder up. I labeled the servo leads on the wing. I have the rudder hooked up and the elevator hooked back up again. I have clearance of the servo rods to the receiver. I just eyeballed the tail wheel straight. I can make any adjustments by loosening the nut here and then moving the rod in or out, depending on which direction I need to go. But same process before. I clamped popsicle sticks onto here to keep the rudder straight. Put this on, tighten it up, and then we have left and right, left and right, up and down, up and down. I was worried that the elevator was going to hit the control horn for the rudder, but it's fine. Control surfaces are done, except for once I get everything together, I will make the necessary throws. All right, the next thing I want to do is find a place for the ESC. I'm thinking down here at the bottom of the motor mount area. The plane that crashed that I took this out of, I did have a little extender, which I think I'm going to have to use for here. See if I can get the leads, battery leads down through this hole here, and there's another hole down in there. that will come up here. That way the lead will be long enough to reach that I can plug in the battery. I was thinking about maybe somehow in here, but motor mount bolts are in the way. There's not a real good airflow through this plane. There's nothing like you would see on a foamy or something in the hole in the back of the fuselage for the airflow. But here, I think we'll get, from the prop, we'll get some air blowing over this, and maybe a little bit into the enclosed fuselage area once the wing is on. But I think I will mess around with this a little bit, see the best fit. And I did put tape on the leads so I know which plugs into where. Get this mounted somehow, probably with zip ties. The battery lead, if I have it like this, will go through here and then out through here and then connect to the battery lead here. I'll stuff all that down. I had planned to have the servo connectors once the wing is on and stuffed down through here, but the wing, everything comes out through the center, so I might have to take these, move them to the center area here. I have the ESC mounted. Some people say use Velcro, some say use zip ties. I ended up using zip ties. I have 3 zip ties holding it in place. I connected the motor leads. I have them stuffed back here. I might do a servo tie around the leads and the engine mount bolt. Trick was getting this lead through here. What I did, another servo lead, I fished it up through here and then up out of this hole, connected the battery lead from the ESC, pulled it through, and I have a servo clip on it, or not servo clip, servo lead clip. And that will just be stuffed down in here. And then on this side, I have the lead coming up through the 2 access points in the fuselage behind the firewall. I did put the extension on, and I did put some heat shrink around it to keep that from not coming apart. And so this should work well, I think. And here's what it looks like from the front or the top. I think I will put some a zip tie around here loosely. The next part of the final assembly will be the cowling. Instructions show to put the stickers on first and then mount the cowling to the fuselage. But before I do that, I wanted to get a look at the space of the back plate where the prop rests up against to the front of the cowling. There is about a 1/2 inch space. So what I think I will do, I will push the mounting motor mount back a 1/2 inch or so, or to where the instructions call for a 2 millimeter from the front of the cowling to where the back of the prop would be. So I think I'll push it back or have it come back a little bit. I'll have to loosen these up, loosen these back screws up, get it all nice and even. Maybe it has a little bit of left thrust into it, and then push it back so where it looks a little bit better. And as far as the mounting, I can't go back past here. This front hatch comes off, so I can only go to there, make sure it's level and all that, and then drill the holes. There's only 4 holes to drill drill the holes in the block. And I'll show this when I do it, but I was going to put tape across after the hole is drilled, mark where the hole is in the tape, peel the tape back, put the cowl on, put the tape over it, then drill the hole into the cowling where that tape mark is, and all the holes should line up. But I'll show that when I get to that part. First, readjust the motor mount. Looking back at the motor mount section, it says the thrust of the motor is already set at the factory. So the firewall here is already set at the proper angle to get the motor at the proper thrust. So as I did before, I just had to make sure I have equal distance of all 4 mounting bolts from the back of the plate to the firewall. I moved these back bolts about 8 millimeters or so, and to make sure I have the same length at all 4 points, I cut a push rod guide tube to the length that I wanted and made sure each bolt was at the proper distance and the R. So what I'll do now is do one double check, and then something I didn't do before, I didn't put Loctite on these, so I will put Loctite on these, tighten it down, then proceed the cowling installation. But before that, get an idea of what it was and what it will be. Put that on, and you can see it's a much better look, being a little bit closer than what it was and what the instructions call for. The next step I would do is I would drill, it calls for 2.5 by 10 millimeter screws. So it comes out to what, 3/32 drill bit. I would drill into each of the blocks, mounting blocks for the cowling, a hole. And then, instead of using tape, I cut some regular computer paper. I will put that over the hole and tape it in place. Now my cowling's only going to go back, quarter inch or so, but if you have a cowling that's going to slide back farther, you want to make sure you have your tape back far enough so the cowling doesn't hit it. So with the hole drilled, I have a hole punch and make a hole in the paper. That way, when you slide the cowling on, cowling will go underneath the paper. And once the cowling is in place, with all 4 papers on the outside, drill a hole the same size as the 3/32 drill bit, same size as the hole for the screw. Drill those, and then get a bigger drill bit that the screw will fit in, because if you use the same size drill bit and screw it into the cowling, it could crack. So I'll do the same steps for the next 3 holes. Actually, I'll show another one. Turn the fuselage on the side. Hole punch just to make an indentation in the block so the drill bit doesn't slide, pretty much in the center. Get the drill in the mark. Go up and down. Get a piece of paper. Tape it down. And punch a hole in the paper. Just put one more piece of tape on the back. I'll do the same procedure for the other 2 holes. What I did, I don't want the cowling to go past the edge of the front firewall to block the hatch for the battery, so I put 2 X-Acto blades in. That way, when I install the cowling, it won't go past the opening for the hatch. I can still remove the hatch to get to the battery. And I have the cowling on underneath the paper. We'll put the prop on, but this will have the cowling on straight. I just have to ensure the paint lines match up, that they're in line. And with the prop on, I will, it looks like I might have to raise the cowling a little bit, but I will get that on where it looks good. I will tape it, and then I will drill the holes pre-marked in the paper. I have the cowling taped on, looking at it from side view. Paint lines match up, and cowling looks to be in a proper position. We're the same distance, more or less, from the cowling to the propeller. Using the same size drill bit that I drilled into the mounting wood, we'll drill into the cowling. Have a little punch. We'll make a slight indentation in the cowling, and then same drill bit, drill into the hole, into the cowling. Then you see the hole there. I'll do the same for the other 3, and then with a larger drill bit, the size of the screw, will drill into the cowling. So I'll make the hole same size as the screw. Then I will put some CA in the hole, and I'll do the same for the other 3 screws. I drilled the larger size holes into the cowling, all 4 screw areas. I will now screw the mounting screws into the blocks, take them out, and apply thin CA into each of the holes. I will apply the stickers next to the cowling. And looking at the sticker sheet, I don't know if you can see it, but there is other stickers to put on the fuselage. This comes from the USS Princeton. It's home ship, VF-27. I have the cowling mounted except for the last screw. There is something I wanted to show you. I cut the rubber grommet, what you put on the servos to mount. I cut those in half, and I use it as a washer. I think this helps keep the screw on the cowling from unscrewing. So just put the washer or the grommet onto the screw. You can see that. And then the last screw, I did that already for the other 3 screws. So let's screw this in. A grommet and then the thin CA in the hole, I think will make a good tight fit where the screws won't come undone. I have the stickers on the cowling, 17 on the tail, the VF-27 USS Princeton, and the fuselage, I'm not going to mount the propeller yet, but nice good clearance. Next step will be the putting the wing on, and then the plastic covering on the bottom of the wing. I've connected all the servo leads to the receiver. It's a rat's nest in there, looks like. Put the wing in, make sure all the leads are, or the servo wires are down in the center. Looks like a good, no wires are pinched. Get the wing in place. I have to determine where the holes are in the covering. Open those up and screw the wing bolts in. Also have the bottom plastic covering. It doesn't say, but assume I glue it on the edges here and then drill the holes in the marked locations here for the wing bolts to fit in. I have the wing mounted now. The holes for the bolts were up or farther away from the trailing edge. They go into the bottom sheeting onto a there's a piece of plywood that the bolts rest on, and now the bottom plastic covering, it does say to use CA, but I would probably use canopy glue or maybe epoxy. I will have the tighter contour here. When I glue it in place, there is a little gap in the back. I think I will, like I said, have it up this area, glue it in place, tape it. But before I do that, I have to drill or make the holes for the bolts. I have the holes drilled in the wing plastic cover. I just used a series of smaller bits to larger bits to pretty much the largest bit I have that I can use on this. The head of the bolt does fit through the hole, but in case I need to enlarge it later, I will just use my Dremel. Next step, I will glue this on. I think I will use epoxy instead of CA. Okay, I have the bottom plastic wing cover in place, glued, and have tape hold it down until the glue dries. We'll give it some time for that to cure. The bottom wing plastic cover is glued down. Doesn't look all too bad, I guess. With the plane turned over, you can see probably could have done a better job getting this closer to the fuselage. May trim that a little bit. I think I definitely will trim this back edge. This side's not too bad, and we'll trim that side as well. I will make these trims after I take the wing back off. It'll be easier to do. The next step will be to balance the plane. It calls for 92 to 96 millimeters from the leading edge back. At this black line here, it's about 95 millimeters. So I'll just use that as a guide for right now. I will install the prop, put a temporary restraining Velcro in the compartment here, and see how it looks for balancing. All right, I have the plane upside down. Do the first balance at that line that I showed you earlier. And this is way tail heavy. I don't think I can move the battery any farther forward. I usually do the balancing with the wheels retracted. So let me turn it over and see about if I can move the battery any farther forward. Using my Habaco builder's triangle, I measured again, and the 92 to 96 millimeters back from the leading edge is more, maybe a quarter inch back from this line. But still, I balanced it with my fingers. It was back another couple inches, so I was way off center. I did try to add some fishing weight just to sit on the bottom of the cowling to see what that do, and I'm not sure what the weight is I have here, but that was not enough. So I'm going to have something heavy, and that maybe F14. I have a big bolt in the front of that, so I'm thinking I'm going to have to do something along those lines, or line the front as far as I can, glue in some weight. Might have to order some weight that I can mold to put in here. Looking through all my drawers, I didn't have any weight that I could use. I got a box of nails just to get an idea of how much weight I will need to order. I did have to take some nails out of the box. With this weight up here, it does balance. If you can see that or not, but I will get a kitchen scale and measure how much this box of nails weighs. I have the kitchen scale set to ounces, and it's going to need about 10 ounces, just over 10 ounces of weight. So I'll make sure I will order enough weight and glue it to the front of the cowling. I ended up ordering 18 ounces of wheel weights. They're adhesive, bendable, that I can put in the cowling here. It has been a couple days, and the weights that I have ordered have come in. These are adhesive steel wheel weights. Each square is a 1/4 ounce each, has adhesive, and I think these will go nicely inside the cowling. When I did the first balance with the nails, they had more. There was more up to in the center of the cowling area. Hopefully, if I can get these to the edge here, I won't need as much weight. I was also thinking maybe in the battery compartment, there's a spot there that maybe I can stack these on top of each other and use the weight there. Each of these strips of weight is 2 ounces. If I wanted to put the weight back towards the battery compartment, or in the battery compartment, it looks like it would take all 18 ounces. Doing that, it does level out, but I don't think I want to put 18 ounces in the battery compartment. Moving the weight forward, just have it taped on right now so it doesn't slide off. Having it up towards the front of the cowling, it does take the 10 ounces. It is level there, or balanced there. So it looks like it will have to go. And the front part of the cowling as much as possible. It has the adhesive, but I will also use epoxy to epoxy it in. Using the epoxy will add a little bit of weight. Before I started gluing the weights in place, I wanted to do some test runs. First test run was putting the weights long ways in the bottom of the cowling like they are now. I did test it. It was still a little bit tail heavy. So next step, I will cut these in two, then line them up like they are now, tape them in place, and check the balance. I have these split in two. They're in rows of 5 stacked on top of each other. When I glue it in place, it will be a little bit neater. All right, I have the cowling back on and the prop. Let me check the balance now. I think that looks good. Double check my finger placement. All right, I think that's good. You can see the balance. I did take the adhesive off of one strip and put it in place, and it is holding pretty good. I'll put the rest in, but I still think I will put some epoxy once they're in place, maybe epoxy around it and over the top. That, or I have car clear 3M tape you put on the car with the paint. But these are for wheels to balance your car tires and other wheels, motorcycles, quads, whatever. So this adhesive must be pretty good, but I don't know how well it will hold over time on the fiberglass inside here. I have the weight in place, stuck in with the, it's adhesive. I do have this clear automotive tape. It's repair tape, not paint tape, but that seems to have a good bond. Sticks well to the fiberglass. If I go this route, I will put the tape obviously on the fiberglass across the weight. That or epoxy, either side, both sides in the back, and then cover the top with the epoxy to ensure it doesn't come out. I think the epoxy might be the way to go, but I went with the epoxy route. I put the epoxy around the sides and across the top. It's been sitting up for a few minutes, but once it cures, I'll put the cowling back on and rebalance it. The epoxy has cured. One last test of the balance. Prop is on. Let's find my marks. And that's a balanced airplane. When the wheels are down, may go a little nose heavy, but that's fine. The next and last step will be the control surface throws. Elevator, rudder, looks like max of 15 millimeters. Aileron 10 millimeters, and the flaps down to 35 millimeters. Back to the battery compartment real quick. I did put a piece of foam up behind the firewall so the battery wouldn't be rubbing on the plywood. And I do have a Velcro underneath the battery to keep it in place along with the strap here. So I don't think that's going to go anywhere. And making sure my engine kill switch is off. I will connect the battery. Actually, this will be the first time working the controls. So, elevator, up, down, left, right, left, rudder, aileron, left, right, and then flaps. Looking good. And then retracts. I like the way they turn 90 degrees. Normally, I set the control surfaces up on my planes. I just do, the max throw, and then I use the door rate to less throw. Using the meter, I have it set to 15 degrees up. That's pretty much dead on, 15 degrees. Move to the other side, 15 degrees. So how I have my radio set up, I will have position 1 for the ailerons at 100%. Change this to elevator, and then position 2, I will have it a little bit less, and then position 3, less throw. So right now it's at 58. So I just eyeball it. So that's position 2, position 3. So I will probably took some out. Actually, too much. Let me add a little bit more in. Get it to where you have about the same amount of throw for each position. Take some out on the bottom, position 3. And then this translates over to the opposite position. Position 1, 2, 3. I'll do the same for the ailerons and the rudder and the flaps. But the same process, I'll use a little meter, set it to what it calls for, and make my adjustments full. Position 1 and position 2. I have all the control surfaces to the max throws that I want, the min throws that I want, ailerons, position 0, position 2, 1, and 0. Position down all the way. It's still not quite 35, but I think that's good enough. Mid, and then no flaps. Did not add any elevator into it yet. We'll see how it flies when I add the flaps. Then I can add or mix in elevator as needed. Again, my engine cut switch is off. Turn it on, and a little bit of throttle. Engine cut is back off, and no throttle. Then at some point, the maiden flight, but I'm hesitant to fly this on our field. These wheels might be big enough and sturdy enough, the retracts, but the condition of our field leaves a lot to be desired. If you've seen my recent videos, you'll know how messed up the field is. From the taxiing on my driveway, I had to add 33 right to the subtrim of the rudder. And looking down from the rear view, back end of the plane at the tail wheel, it is looks a little bit straighter than looking at it from the front. And put this back at 0. You can see it is off this a little bit. So what I'll do now is I'll take off the wing and then adjust the rod for the tail wheel on the controller or the connector up inside the fuselage. I'll do that. I loosen the set screw on the push rod connector for the tail wheel. Tail wheel is straight in relationship to the white markings on the bottom of the fuselage. Tighten it back up. Any adjustments at the field I will make on the radio using the subtrim.